Ever since the 5th episode of Invincible Season 4 dropped, the comic and show fans alike have but one topic of conversation, and that is Robert Kirkman's decision to gender swap Tech Jacket. Introduced as Zack Thompson in the first issue of the Tech Jacket comics, the superhero has been reimagined as a female character named Zoe Thompson, who's barely a teenage girl in pigtails, but can still pack quite a punch. Everything else seems to be exactly the same so far, except for the fact that she might go on to replace Oliver's alien girlfriend from the comics, and honestly, I can see why Kirkman would want to make that change. Having said that, there's no better time than the present to talk about the anatomy of Tech Jacket from the comics, because, except for changing Zack to Zoe, the power and abilities department will definitely remain the same. So without waiting another moment, let's figure out just how powerful Tech Jacket was in the Robert Kirkman comics. Why was the Tech Jacket suit created? So, a Tech Jacket is basically a suit of power armor created by the Geldarians, who are a race of highly intelligent yet physically weak aliens. In order to make up for their physical inadequacy, Geldarians invented the Tech Jacket to strengthen their physical qualities by 100 times. As they're not a warrior species but a scientific one, they heavily rely on such kind of tech in order to live normally. In fact, Geldarians are equipped with a similar tech shortly after they're born. Now, when the Viltrumite Empire targeted their planet, they were forced to develop countermeasures in order to defend themselves against their brutal oppressor. So they created advanced technology, including the Tech Jacket, which is basically a powerful exosuit, capable of granting its user abilities far beyond that of conventional weaponry, surpassing even what organizations like the Global Defense Agency could produce. While the Tech Jacket posed a potential threat, the Viltrumites, operating with significantly reduced numbers, ultimately determined that direct conquest was still necessary. Does the suit select its own host? So, the first issue of the Tech Jacket comics, we meet a high school kid named Zack Thompson, living a rather normal teen life. One day, when he was helping out his dad with his shop, Zack's dad goes out in the front after being called by who seems to be a customer. But it turns out it was a couple of thugs sent by a loan shark who had once loaned him money to help him keep his shop afloat. Apparently, his father had not been consistent with the payments, so in order to threaten him, the thugs broke his fingers. Zack was scared to see this, but quickly took his dad to the hospital to get his hands bandaged. Now, tensions were already high in the Thompson household when, to make matters worse, on the next day, Zack noticed a giant burning object drop from the sky while walking to school. As he rushed to the object's point of impact, Zack found a severely damaged alien vessel and a survivor lying inert in the crater. He immediately acted on instinct and climbed into the wreckage in order to help the alien being, but as he reached out to touch the survivor, long strands of metal shot out from the alien's vest and wrapped around his body. Without any prior warning, just a mere second later, the craft exploded, which consumed both the alien and the ship he was attached to. However, Zack was miraculously unharmed. As the light faded and the dust cleared, Zack took a good look at himself, only to realize that the metallic vest had attached itself to his torso. Now, to give you a bit of context, in the beginning of the comic, we see a Geldarian spaceship out in space on a mission to seek help from the neighboring galaxies, as their planet, Geldaria, has been at war for centuries. But now their opponents, the Kresh, have finally achieved dominance over their homeworld after decades of deadlock. Even though the ship took a short route through one of the lesser advanced galaxies to avoid any detection by Kresh outposts, a Kresh scout ship packed with an entire army attacked them. Unfortunately, the Geldarian crew were outnumbered, so while the others fought, Kelda went back to save the ship. But their ship had suffered severe damages, and the only planet nearby was Earth, which their kind considered to be a Class 9 planet. Even if they're not allowed to land on a less intelligent world, they had to repair their damages to resume their mission. So, Kelda decided to use his Tech Jacket to guide the ship from outside so they could reach Earth before their life support ran out. Now, unfortunately, that was still an overestimation because they did end up crash landing on Earth. When the ship landed on top of him, the Tech Jacket saved Kelda, but it was only a matter of time because in the event of an off-world crash, Geldarian ships are set to self-destruct along with the crew inside, as Geldarian laws do not allow their technology to be used by lesser developed civilizations. Luckily, Kelda was a good guy because when he noticed Zack trying to help him, he had no other option but to order his tech suit to attach itself to him. The explosion would have killed Zack, and Kelda knew that the human was not aware of that. As Kelda did not want his dying action to cause the death of an innocent, he transferred his tech suit onto Zack right before the explosion, thus saving the human and indefinitely binding him him to the suit in the process. The suit makes sure the host is well maintained. So in case you didn't know, the tech jacket suit provides full life support, allowing the survival of its host in space without external oxygen and shielding them from extreme temperatures, vacuum, and other hazardous environmental conditions. And not just that, because in the comic, when Zack tries to go to sleep, the tech jacket alerts him that it's about to commence host maintenance. We then see glowing yellow points beaming across Zack's body, which immediately wakes him up. After he asks the jacket what it's up to, we learn that the tech jacket was meeting its daily scheduled requirement of host maintenance. Basically, each night the jacket automatically removes and destroys all germs, bacteria, and dirt from the user's body, thus removing the need to bathe. This particular factor really delighted Zack, as he would never have to take a shower again. Not just that, but as an adult, Zack discovered it was also keeping him clean shaven, as he received the tech jacket as a teenager, and ever since then, he never saw himself grow any facial hair and came to believe that he simply couldn't. Tech Jacket's energy projection is powerful enough to blow a hole through a Viltrumite's chest. So, Zack's Tech Jacket suit can shoot powerful beams of energy, usually from his forehead or from his fist. If you've read the Tech Jacket comic, you probably know that after Zack saved his father from the loan shark, they spent the next day attempting to discover the limits of the Tech Jacket suit. As Zack tried to use his powers to knock over a few cans, he soon discovered that its capabilities were even greater than he or his father expected, as a powerful pink beam blasted out of his armor-covered wrist and pretty much eviscerated the cans and glass bottles in sight. However, after the upgrades through the years, especially done by the Colossal, his energy blasts are now powerful enough to blow a hole through a Viltrumite's chest. To give some more context for the Invincible comic fans, do you remember how in the 144th issue, Mark, who was now the Emperor of the Viltrumite Empire, fought a battle against Alan and the Coalition of Planets because apparently Mark and the Viltrumites were eliminating threats, shutting down hostile races, and bringing peace quadrants of the galaxy, and bringing peace to quadrants of the galaxy that have been at war for eons. Turns out that bringing peace all over the galaxy has led to a lot of planets to leave the coalition, as they felt there was no need for that kind of safety anymore. In fact, all the planets begin to agree that there is no need for the coalition to exist at all, which was something Mark agreed with. Now, during this battle, Tech Jacket fought on behalf of the coalition, and during a montage of the battle, you can see him piercing a hole through a Viltrumite's chest with his pink glowing energy projection. Now, in the Invincible show, Zoe Thompson's Tech Jacket suit can also fire concentrated beams of dark pink, blue, or red energy, powerful enough to harm powerful beings such as Viltrumites. Even though she's a preteen, we saw that Zoe was clever enough to figure out the walking dread can only absorb a certain amount of energy and managed to overcharge it with the help of her energy projection to defeat him. The Tech Jacket allows the user to survive in space with incredible speed. Given that Kelda used the protection of his Tech Jacket to try and guide his spaceship to Earth, it was established very early in the comics that the suit allows its user to easily survive in space without any inconvenience. This was further reinforced in the show when we see Zoe's Tech Jacket quickly adapt to fight with the Viltrumites in outer space. The suit maintained oxygen levels to help her breathe in space and constantly worked to fix itself when it suffered any damage. Even when one of the Viltrumites blinded her vision by damaging the head of her suit, the Tech Jacket worked to fix it in a matter of minutes, thus restoring her ability to see in space. She fought the Viltrumites with skill and precision, even if she had no clue about their weak points, and her suit allowed her to sway away from any attacks coming her way with incredible speed. In fact, if you did not know yet, Tech Jacket's suit grants the user the ability to fly, allowing effortless maneuvering throughout the atmosphere, even into the vacuum of space. Lastly, it was revealed that when Nolan left to save Oliver and Mark from conquest on another planet, Zoe and Alan were overwhelmed by the growing numbers of the Viltrumite army and chose to hide in an escape pod in the lower decks of the Viltrumite gunship as it traveled through space. Now, the cool part is that Zoe could turn her Tech Jacket into an escape pod big enough to squeeze in her and a giant Unopin. The suit is invulnerable for the most part. So, we already discussed that once the Tech Jacket suit is damaged, it takes quite a bit of time to repair itself. However, in the case of smaller damages, like when Walking Dread scratched her chest, the suit repaired itself within seconds. What really matters is that Tech Jacket's suit has the ability to repair itself even after sustaining severe damage or trauma. But in the show, Zoe was smart enough to figure out that she had to use ranged attacks if she was not strong enough or equipped enough for close combat. Even in the comics, Zack's tech jacket greatly enhances his durability. I mean, think about it. Immediately after getting it, he survived the explosion of a Geldarian starship with no injury. The jacket also makes him completely bulletproof and allows him to survive massive blows from Viltrumites, which is something we also see in Zoe in the latest Invincible episode. Given that so far both versions of the tech jacket share the same abilities, let's get back to discussing the comics. So, Zack's tech jacket originally made him about 100 times faster and gave him physical strength far beyond human limits. As Geldarians are naturally weaker than humans, this makes the tech jacket significantly stronger than most of their species and enables him to perform incredible feats like effortlessly ripping armored Krish soldiers to pieces, pushing a battleship to crush another, or throwing a starship into the sun. A much better example of this in the show was seen during the Invincible War, when Tech Jacket demonstrated the ability to battle on equal footing with an Invincible variant named Mustachable, and ultimately defeated him without suffering any visible harm to the suit. In fact, that battle went on for 2 days straight, and Tech Jacket kept fighting that Invincible variant toe-to-toe without even getting tired. Not just that, the comic version of Tech Jacket has also been able to make Sportvincible and Hairvincible bleed with the power of his blows. Plus, we already discussed that Tech Jacket is able to compete with the Viltrumites in terms of speed. Not just that, but both variants of the superhero can easily withstand strong blows from Viltrumites, and have the ability to absorb shock, as we saw in the show when Zoe was able to withstand a kick to the head from an adult Viltrumite like Crad. What makes the Tech Jacket suit more powerful when attached to a human? I know we've already discussed that Geldarians are weaker than humans, which is why Zack turned out to be significantly stronger than most of their species, but there's more to it. So in the comics, after the Geldarians believed Zack had killed Kelda and stolen the suit, they abducted him from his school after rendering him unconscious. Later, he was woken up by an explosion that tore through the wall of the alien ship he was shackled to. Luckily, his tech jacket instantly protected him from the vacuum of space by extruding a suit of armor around his body. At that moment, one of the armored Geldarians that had assaulted him earlier came to the damaged cell to set him free. He told Zack that he was being held on the charges of murder and stealing a tech jacket. However, the ship that they were transporting him in had come under attack. Zack allowed his captor to shackle him and lead him out of the ship, and even as he was set adrift, he watched his captors engage a group of much larger armored foes in a losing battle. Eventually, when an errant blast of energy destroyed his shackles, Zack made a split-second decision to use his tech jacket to destroy his captor's attackers, and then surrendered peacefully to the Geldarians once more. Among other things, he realized that they were the only ones that actually knew how to get him home, so pissing them off would not really help his case. Following this, Zack was taken to the aliens' homeworld, to the planet Geldaria, where he learned about the Geldarians being a highly advanced yet physically weak race who were locked in a desperate war against the Kresh. He also figured out that it was the Kresh who had attacked the transport sent to retrieve Zack. Fortunately, Zack's actions in battle, in addition to his tech jacket's logs, ultimately proved his innocence to the Geldarians. But then, these aliens saw a unique opportunity in Zack, as his human biology made his tech jacket exponentially more powerful than any Geldarian warrior, which basically means that Zack's raw power alone could literally turn the war in the Geldarians' favor. After listening to the Geldarians' story, Zack agreed to fight in their war and spent the next month going through their warrior training program. When he was finally thrown into battle, it turned out Zack's training was not really that necessary, as the raw power of his tech jacket, phased with his human anatomy, was simply too much for the Kresh forces to withstand. From then on, Zack won virtually every conflict single-handedly, and eventually forced the Kresh to retreat. With the war finally at an end, the grateful Geldarians then returned Zack home after being reassured that he would not abuse the power of their technology. The Tech Jacket can morph to create additional weapons and defenses. So, in the show, Tech Jacket's suit can be used to construct a variety of weapons and other tools at her disposal. Not just that the suit itself can be reconfigured entirely to suit her needs. That's why Zoe could turn it into an escape pod for herself and Alan when the Viltrumites were out for their blood. She can also generate defensive energy shields just like her comic counterpart Zack does in the book. Having said that, the Tech Jacket also greatly enhances a wielder's senses. The suit possesses sensors that alert Zoe to any incoming danger in the show. In fact, these sensors appear to be long-range and accurate, as they're able to detect threats faster than other sensory devices. Both of these feats come in handy for Zoe during the Viltrumite attack, as generating weapons from the morphed suit really gave her an upper hand to evade the two Viltrumites chasing after her. Can the tech jacket suit be removed from its host? So, as a last resort, the tech jacket can definitely activate an automated systematic overload within the suit, which, in other words, means that it can self-destruct. However, the suit will take hours, maybe even days to fully reboot to power. Even then, the suit cannot be removed from its host unless someone activates a transitional flux, meaning that it gets transitioned from one host to another, like we see Kelda doing for Zack. Nobody, not even the creators of the suit, have the legal authority to remove the tech jacket from its host, especially because the removal of a tech jacket is an extremely complex and dangerous operation. If an unauthorized removal is attempted, just like how Zack partially tried to rip the tech jacket off his body while hiding in the school washroom, the armor will simply report that removal is not permitted under Executive Decree 574-3. Well, that brings us to the end of this video. My intuition tells me that we're going to see a lot more new powers in the show's version of Tech Jacket. While it is safe to be sure that Zoe's lore will be altered to fit the show's broader narrative, I'm excited to see if we'll get a hint of her full backstory, especially in terms of her training with the Geldarians before she became a full-fledged superhero. Not just that, she has the potential for some massive power upgrades exclusively added for the Invincible show. But that's just my 2 cents. What do you guys think about the new characterization of Tech Jacket in the Invincible show? Let us know your thoughts and theories in the comments below.